Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really interesting topic. We're diving into a new set of sources focused on the global wood-based panel market.
Right. It's a fascinating area. It touches on construction, manufacturing.
Exactly. And our mission today is pretty straightforward. Quickly get to the heart of this market research. We want to pinpoint the absolute essential takeaways. We're looking at the data from 2021, projecting all the way out to 2033.
hmm So revenue, growth rates, TGRs, the whole picture.
That's it. Compound annual growth rates, regional trends, the works. We want to see where the growth is really happening and, well, what it all means.
Okay, let's get into it.
All right, so let's start with the big picture. Globally, back in 2021, this market was valued at $169.8 billion. Pretty substantial.
Definitely a big number to start with.
Yeah, and the projection. It's expected to climb past $215 billion by 2025.
Okay.
And then here's the kicker, jump to about $345.6 billion by 2033.
Wow, that's nearly double the 2021 figure.
It is. And that translates to an overall compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, of 6.1% over that whole period.
You know, a 6.1% CAGR consistently over more than a decade, that's really quite strong. It signals, well, incredibly solid and sustained demand across a whole range of industries globally.
Right. It's not just a blip.
Not at all. Like you said, essentially doubling by 2033. That's a remarkable trajectory. It shows a lot of confidence in these materials worldwide.
So given that huge global growth, let's start breaking it down. Where should we begin? How about region by
It
region?
makes sense. Gives us a clearer view.
Okay, let's zoom into North America first. The sources show pretty steady expansion here. It's projected to grow from roughly, what was it, $47.9 billion in 2021
Yeah.
to over $91.5 billion by 2033. That works out to a solid 5.66% CGR.
Still healthy growth, even if slightly below that global average.
Exactly. And digging into the country's specifics, the U.S. is the big player, obviously. It goes from about $37.9 billion up to over $71.5 billion. That's a 5.57% CAGR.
Quite the bulk of the market.
Then you have Canada. Interestingly, it shows a slightly higher growth rate, about 6.04%.
Yeah.
Goes from $6.4 billion to nearly $12.9 billion.
Hmm. Interesting. Any thoughts on why Canada might be slightly ahead there?
The source doesn't specify, but you could
Yeah.
speculate maybe specific housing booms or resource-related construction.
Could be, and Mexico.
Mexico is also forecast for strong expansion, $3.6 billion to $7.1 billion, with a KGR around 5.83%. So pretty consistent across the board.
Yeah, it really is. It's quite uniform, that growth in North America. Like you said, Canada's a bit higher, but the overall story is steady, reliable demand. It's, a mature market, but clearly one that's still moving forward quite significantly.
Okay, let's hop across the Atlantic now. Europe holds a pretty significant market share, but the growth stories within Europe are, well, quite diverse.
Yeah, Europe's never monolithic, is it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
So the overall European market, valued at $36.7 billion in 2021, is projected to hit over $71.5 billion by 2033. That gives it a 5.91% CAGR, slightly higher than North America's overall rate.
Okay, so keeping pace globally.
Right, but let's look inside Europe. Germany stands out. It's projected to more than double, reaching over $14.4 billion. Right. And its CAGR is the strongest of the big economies there, 6.31%.
Germany leading the pack. Interesting.
The UK is also strong, over 6.1% CAGR, growing to about $8.1 billion.
Okay.
France and Russia show more moderate growth, around 5.1% to 5.2%.
Right.
And then Italy. Italy actually shows the lowest growth in this specific group of countries, 4.68%, growing from $1.8 billion to just under $3 billion.
Any indication why Italy might be lagging slightly compared to, say, Germany or the UK within this data set?
Again, the source focuses on the numbers, but it could reflect maybe different construction cycles, economic factors, or even potentially different preferences for building materials gaining traction there.
Makes sense. It highlights those internal variations.
But here's a really fascinating bit from the Europe data, the category labeled Rest of Europe.
Always an interesting one.
It's actually projected to have the highest growth within Europe, a remarkable 6.96% CAGR. Yeah, surging from about $6.6 billion to over $15 billion.
That's really telling, isn't it? That rest of Europe figure. It strongly suggests that, maybe less mature economies, perhaps in Eastern or Central Europe, are really picking up steam.
Right. Significant development happening there.
Exactly. Could be infrastructure, could be residential expansion, maybe EU funding playing a role, driving investment. It paints a picture of dynamic growth outside the traditional powerhouses.
Okay, now, prepare yourself. This is where the global growth engine really fires up. Asia Pacific.
Right. This is usually where the big numbers are in global growth stories.
Absolutely. This region leads overall. In 2021, revenues were already huge, $61.1 billion, expected to jump to an astonishing $131.3 billion by 2033. That's the highest regional CAGR globally, 6.75%.
Phenomenal growth.
And within APAC, well, China, it really sets the pace. It grows from over $24.3 billion to nearly $54.8 billion. That's the highest country CAGR globally in this data, 7.27%.
7.27%. That's massive compounding over a decade.
It is. And incredibly, India is right there with China, almost matching the pace. India goes from just over $11.1 billion to over $25.6 billion. That's a 7.23% CAGR.
Wow. Two giants growing at over 7%.
Yeah. Then you've got other significant players too. Japan, South Korea, Australia, Southeast Asia. They all contribute significantly.
Of course.
And guess what? Just like in Europe, the rest of APAC category, it stands out again. It's the fastest growing subregion overall, looking at an incredible 7.37% CAGR. Though it's starting from a smaller pace, about $1.4 billion to $3.8 billion.
That is just immense growth across Asian Pacific. Wow. And it makes sense when you connect it to the underlying factors, right? So, we're talking huge populations, rapid urbanization still underway, massive industrialization, particularly in China and India.
The scale is just hard to comprehend sometimes.
It really is. The sheer volume of new building, residential, commercial, industrial, it just drives this colossal demand for materials like wood-based panels. A CAGR over 7%. The market isn't just growing there, it's practically exploding.
Massive opportunity.
Huge opportunity. But also, potential challenges, supply chains, resources. Managing that scale of growth is complex.
Definitely. Okay, let's shift focus again. South America. This region is also showing a pretty impressive CAGR, actually higher than the global average.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Overall figures for South America show a jump from $10.5 billion in 2021 to over $25.2 billion by 2033. That's a robust 6.28% CAGR.
Beating the global average. That's significant.
It is. And looking at key countries, Brazil leads the way. It climbs from about $3.65 billion to nearly $9 billion. That's a 6.47% CAGR.
Strong performance from Brazil.
Colombia isn't far behind either. Very similar growth, a 6.45% CAGR, growing from $0.8 billion to over $2 billion.
Okay.
Argentina also contributes significantly, growing to $2.8 billion with a solid 5.77% CAGR.
That surge in South America beating the global rate, it really suggests a region that's, investing heavily in its development. That kind of growth points to major infrastructure projects, expanding construction, vibrant economic activity driving demand for these core materials.
A lot of potential being realized there.
Seems like it.
Okay, moving on to the Middle East. Here, the picture is more moderate. Steady gains, but not quite the explosion we see elsewhere.
Right. Different dynamic.
The overall figures show growth from $9 billion in 2021 to over $16.5 billion by 2033. This gives it the lowest regional CAGR in the dataset, 4.79%.
Okay, still positive growth, but definitely slower paced.
Exactly. Key contributors are Saudi Arabia, growing to over $6.7 billion, and Turkey, reaching almost $3.7 billion. Their CAGRs are around 4.7%, 4.6%. Interestingly, the UAE, while smaller in size, shows a slightly higher TGR within the region, around 5.18%.
That comparatively lower growth in the Middle East, it could mean a few things. Perhaps a more mature market in terms of its use of these specific panels.
Possibly.
Or maybe just different economic priorities guiding investment right now compared to, say, Asia or South America.
Yeah.
It might be more stable, established demand rather than that rapid expansion phase we see elsewhere.
Yeah, provides important context when comparing regions.
Definitely. Helps in strategy.
All right, finally, let's wrap up the regional tour with Africa. The market here grows from about $4.6 billion in 2021 to over $9.3 billion by 2033. That's a CAGR of 5.16%.
Okay, steady growth there too.
Yeah. The leading countries highlighted are Nigeria. It expands to almost $2.4 billion with a 5.36% CAGR.
Right.
And South Africa, growing to just under $4 billion with a CAGR right around 5%.
Africa's growth, while maybe not as explosive as APAC, it's steady, isn't it? And it points to that huge emerging potential. As more nations across the continent continue developing infrastructure, building housing, commercial spaces, the fundamental need for materials like these is just going to keep rising. It looks like a market on a consistent upward path.
Okay, so we've gone around the globe. Let's try and synthesize this. What does it all mean?
Yeah, pulling it all together.
Well, the core finding seems crystal clear. This global wood-based panel market is definitely on track for major growth, doubling almost by 2033.
That's the headline number for sure.
And it's really fascinating how Asia-Pacific, driven by China and India and that dynamic rest of Europe category, are really leading the charge with the highest growth rates.
They're the engines, really.
While North America offers that consistent, steady expansion, and then you have regions like South America accelerating faster than the global average. The Middle East, more moderate, Africa, steady potential.
And understanding these, well, these granular regional patterns is just so crucial, isn't it? Whether you're involved in manufacturing or investment strategies or thinking about urban development trends,
Right.
these insights tell you not just that there's growth, but where the biggest opportunities and maybe the biggest challenges are likely to be. Knowing the why behind the different regional speeds allows for much smarter decisions.
So, turning to you, our listener, what really stands out to you from hearing these numbers broken down? Is it the scale of APAC, the surprise growth in rest of Europe, or something else entirely?
Yeah, and maybe one final thought to mull over. Beyond these projections, what underlying factors might emerge between now and 2033? Think about economic shifts we haven't foreseen, maybe new tech in construction, or changes in, say, environmental regulations or resource availability. How could those things either accelerate this growth even further, or perhaps reshape the whole trajectory of this market?
That's a great point. The future is never just a straight line extrapolation. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the global wood-based panel market. We hope digging into these numbers was insightful.
Keep exploring, keep learning.
Absolutely. Until next time.
Welcome to The Deep Dive, your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. We dive deep into the sources you've shared, pulling out the most important insights and turning tricky topics into, well, compelling conversations. Okay, let's unpack this one. You might think wood panels, aren't the most thrilling topic out there, but what we discovered in these sources is that this seemingly kind of unglamorous market, it's actually one of the fastest growing sectors globally, really quietly booming under the radar and shaping our very homes and cities. So today, we're taking a deep dive into the wood-based panel market. It's a critical industry supporting construction, interior design, furniture manufacturing, pretty much worldwide. And it's all based on a really comprehensive market analysis.
Right. And our mission today is basically to distill the core takeaways from that analysis. We want to uncover the maybe surprising facts and help you truly grasp the fundamental forces at play here. By the end, you should have a crystal clear picture of its robust expansion, the hurdles it faces, and definitely the exciting innovations driving its future. What's fascinating is how these seemingly fundamental materials are now really at the forefront of huge global shifts, tackling climate change, housing our rapidly growing urban populations, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly why we love these deep dives, finding the big story in maybe unexpected places. So let's jump right in, the current state. This market is undeniably experiencing a significant period of expansion, a real boom. But what's truly fueling this momentum? What's the primary engine of growth here?
Well, the analysis points pretty directly to the accelerating demand from two main areas, construction and furniture. We're talking about really essential materials like plywood, medium-density fiberboard, MDF, and particle board. These aren't just, niche products. They are the backbone of modern building. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's really about efficient building for a rapidly urbanizing world. As urban populations keep swelling and real estate development intensifies, especially in emerging markets, the need for cost-effective, versatile, and crucially, readily available engineered wood products just keeps climbing.
I can definitely see that. I mean, the sheer scale of new construction globally is just immense. But beyond just building efficiently, what genuinely surprised me digging into these reports was just how central sustainability has become. It's not just a buzzword anymore, is it? It's a core driver.
Oh, absolutely. Wood-based panels really shine here because they ingeniously use materials that would otherwise be considered waste. Think about it. Sawmill byproducts, small diameter logs from forest thinning operations. Stuff that might just be discarded is actually given new life, and their renewable nature, their inherent compatibility with green building standards. that's firmly positioned them as an ideal choice in this whole low-carbon construction movement. This isn't just a fleeting trend either. This growing environmental consciousness is actively reshaping procurement strategies and construction design philosophies right across the board.
Right, it's baked in now. And speaking of homes,
Yeah.
you know that our flat-pack furniture you probably have somewhere right now. Maybe you put it together yourself. Turns out that everyday convenience is actually a massive, maybe unexpected engine for this market's expansion.
It truly is. The demand for lightweight, modular, affordable furniture solutions has just skyrocketed. It's largely driven by, urban dwellers needing to furnish compact spaces, maybe moving frequently. And e-commerce platforms have only accelerated this shift, making ready-to-assemble or RTA furniture more accessible than ever. Manufacturers of RTA furniture rely heavily on wood-bead panels. Why? Because of their cost efficiency, their process adaptability, and the ease of customization. It's just a perfect fit for a segment driven by convenience and value.
Okay, so on one hand, we get this really robust growth, powerful drivers pushing it forward, construction, sustainability, RTA, but like with any dynamic market, it's rarely all smooth sailing, is it? What are some of the significant hurdles facing this industry that the sources flag up?
Yeah, there are definitely challenges. One of the most pressing, according to the analysis, is the volatility in raw material prices and just availability. Timber and resins, they're the primary ingredients, right?
Right.
They're subject to this complex web of factors. You've got regulatory restrictions, climate impacts like droughts or wildfires affecting supply, and then just persistent supply chain bottlenecks that we've all become familiar with recently. These fluctuations don't just make pricing strategies difficult, they can genuinely hinder long-term production planning. And that hits the small to mid-sized manufacturers particularly hard, the ones with less capital to absorb sudden cost spikes.
That sounds like a huge headache for planning, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned sustainability earlier and green building. I can't help but wonder about the elephant in the room for many wood products, formaldehyde emissions. Are the environmental benefits truly outweighing those health concerns, or is the industry still, grappling with that?
That's a critical point, and yeah, it's a very relevant concern. Many traditional wood panels do indeed use formaldehyde-based adhesives, and these can release volatile organic compounds, VOCs, over time, which, understandably, raises legitimate health and safety concerns, particularly in enclosed indoor spaces like schools, homes, offices, places where we spend a lot of time. So regulatory authorities worldwide, they're tightening emission standards significantly, and that's forcing manufacturers to invest, often heavily, in alternative eco-certified formulations. But that adjustment, well, it can be both costly and technically complex. It often requires new R&D, changes to manufacturing processes. It's not a simple switch.
So it's a push-pull there.
Mm-hmm.
And what about competition? Are other materials starting to encroach on this space?
They are. Competition from alternative materials is definitely growing. Think about fiber cement boards, various plastic composites, even aluminum panels. In certain applications, they can offer greater moisture resistance or maybe superior long-term durability, particularly in, say, harsh environments like exterior cladding or maybe high humidity areas like bathrooms. So this puts continuous pressure on traditional wood-based products. They need to keep innovating and stay cost competitive, or they risk being, outmaneuvered in some segments.
Okay, so the challenges are clear. Raw materials, emissions, competition. But often, those very challenges become the biggest catalyst for innovation, right?
Yeah.
So looking at these hurdles, what does this all mean for the future? Thankfully, the sources you shared highlight some incredibly impactful innovations. Where are we seeing the most exciting breakthroughs?
Absolutely. Challenge breeds innovation. And one of the most impactful trends directly addressing those emission concerns we just talked about is the widespread adoption of low-emission and even formaldehyde-free panels. The demand for eco-certified materials like panels meeting E0, E1 standards, or CARB-compliant panels, it's rapidly increasing.
EVO and E1.CRB. Can you quickly unpack those?
Sure. EO and E1 are rigorous European emission standards for formaldehyde, E0 being the stricter one. CARB is the California Air Resources Board standard, which sets some of the toughest limits in the world. So getting these certifications is becoming really important, especially for, say, premium furniture or sustainable building projects. And this shift, it isn't just about ticking regulatory boxes. It's deeply aligned with growing consumer expectations around health, wellness, and just overall environmental responsibility in the spaces they live and work in.
That sounds like a huge step forward, especially for indoor air quality. That's great. And beyond the health aspect, you hear about some absolutely wild stuff happening with aesthetics now. I'm picturing wood panels that look exactly like, natural stone or even abstract art. Is that really a thing?
It is absolutely a thing.
Yeah.
And it's transforming design possibilities, seriously. The integration of digital printing and advanced surface technologies is really elevating the aesthetic versatility of panels like MDF and HDF, high-density fiberboard. Think about decorative surface enhancements, textured laminates, hyper-realistic prints. They allow manufacturers to replicate the look of natural wood grain with uncanny accuracy, or intricate stone patterns, or even bold, abstract designs. This just offers interior designers and architects immense creative potential without compromising on the material's performance or, importantly, the cost. You can get that high-end look at a fraction of the price and weight.
Wow, okay, so aesthetics are getting a major upgrade. What else? Any big shifts in how they're used structurally?
Yes, definitely. A really significant area of growth is the increasing integration of these wood-based panels in prefabricated and modular construction systems. Their structural efficiency, their relatively lightweight, their ease of handling, it makes them absolutely ideal for things like modular housing. This is especially relevant in, say, disaster-prone regions needing rapid rebuilding or areas facing urban density constraints where building up quickly and efficiently is key. These applications, they aren't just a niche trend. Many see them as representing the future of fast, sustainable, and scalable building solutions. They allow for rapid deployment and really efficient use of resources.
What a deep dive. It's really clear that the wood-based panel market, something that maybe sounds a bit dry initially, is truly undergoing a dynamic transformation. It's this fascinating blend of environmental priorities, evolving consumer trends like RTA furniture, huge technological advancements in things like printing and emissions, and then the shifting global supply chains overlaying it all. It's all shaping its future.
Exactly. And as manufacturers continue to innovate because they have to meet these evolving expectations, the market is undoubtedly poised for consistent growth. We're seeing strong momentum, particularly in sustainable construction, prefabricated housing, and modern furniture applications. It's an industry that might operate a bit behind the scenes, but it's truly foundational to how we build and furnish our modern world.
That really paints a robust picture for an industry that, might seem unassuming at first glance. So think about it the next time you put together a piece of that RTA furniture, or maybe walk into a brand new building. How might these innovations in wood-based panels actually transform the spaces we live and work in, and maybe even change the very concept of home in the years to come? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and remember to keep exploring the vast world of knowledge.